yeah, no, him for everything, especially his view on vaccines. Of course, his wife is a physician, so I think he is biased and not accurate in that area. However, I haven't watched the whole thing, but I sent it to you because I think it has some good. Yeah, I just sent it to you not too long ago, maybe 30 minutes ago. I think it has some good debate tenets, and so I thought, oh, you would probably appreciate it, so I just sent it to you.
Okay.
I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I'm going to try to do that.
I've been on a call for the last hour, so I haven't seen anything.
You're fine.
So let me just lay out my position then for a Christian point of view. Right, I believe that the vegan movement is a satanic movement. Okay, from a Christian point of view. Then from a scientific point of view, I believe that it's at the very best, it's certainly an unproven diet, scientifically speaking. And then from a practical point of view, I see a lot of long-term vegans who are sick. From a short-term point of view, I think it could be a very healthy diet. It can help your body in many ways in the short term, depending on different things. Just in much the same way as a fast can. Like a fast can be very, very helpful, but I'm not going to stay fasting for the rest of my life if I want that life to be very long. So that's just an outline of my position before we debate that. So I'm a bit confused about your position because on the one hand,
Okay.
you seem to suggest that vegan is great. On the other hand, you eat meat and think that 20% of meat is good to have in your diet.
I don't advocate. Okay. I advocate for what people can sustain and what they can best meet. As a holistic practitioner, of course, we have to meet people where they're at, right?
Yeah.
Do I think that vegan is best? Yes, I do, in many, many ways. Have I seen tweaking of it? Obviously, vegan is a very general, broad-based stroke of a conversation. That's a label that is broad-based. Do I see sick vegans? Absolutely. Why do I see sick vegans? Because if they adhere to a refined, like if you go to any vegan, I'm on groups where they're eating at all the same types of places. They're just vegan. So it's processed, it's white flour.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. Same oils.
Right. So we both know, and I'm sure we'll agree, that food today, the vegetables today, the fruit today, doesn't have the nutritional value that it used to have because of the depletion of soil.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. However, my argument would be, let's assume we have perfect soil and we grow all our food in that soil, and our animals that we eat, if we eat animals, have eaten food, their food from that, grown in that soil.
Yes.
That an omnivore would not need any supplementation, but a vegan would.
Okay, so that's a debatable concept because we can't do a control study on that because we don't have good soil.
The nutrients that we need that aren't in the normal food that a vegan diet would have, that you have to start going into weird stuff like algae or something to try and get to get to. So B12 is the most famous one.
Right.
B12 does not exist in a plant.
Oh, okay. Well, hold Tio for 1 second. I've done some research on this. Now, I cannot prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt. Obviously, I have to do more scavenging on research on this. But I developed an idea, and these are, as you're reading in the annals of studies and ideas and theories and things like that, I came across a couple of things. Vitamin C being one, and B12 being another. That we at one point. All right, so I think when you take the evidence of what has happened by sterilizing, we have such a grotesque imbalance of bacteria, mold, fungus.
With the fruit, that I guess that's where you're going with the vegetables. If we eat the dirt, then we get the B12 from the dirt.
at one point, at some point, I believe we were able to manufacture that bacteria and not have to get it from an animal source, which is a secondary source, the same source. And I have many clients who are meat eaters that are B12 deficient. They have to get B12 shots, not through me, but through other.
Is that so? You're using almost an evolutionary position. You're believing in evolution.
No. Oh. Okay. So no, I'm a creationist 100%. But have we lost function? Just like the nutrient value of the fruit and the vegetable, has it not? It's still a fruit. It's still an orange, but it's 800 times less potent in C and so on than
right
100, 200, 500, 1,000 years.
I would say your theory is reasonable, but unproven. So what I'm talking about right now, humans as we are right now are not a hypothetical version of ourselves that may or may not have existed. Right now, if we eat just fruit and vegetables from well-maintained soil, we will not be, most of us, at least most vegans, are deficient in B12. And at least most vegans would be deficient, most. I think probably all. I think the ones in the studies that aren't deficient is because they're supplementing. But we'll forget whether it's all or partial. We definitely have a major problem with B12 deficiency for vegans.
Yeah, and I regularly recommend B12 supplementation, not just for, but I will have to tell you, I have a large group of, I mean, most of my clients are not vegan. Most of my clients are not diet conscious. They are just regular SAD participants who have they've maxed their bodies out and they are extremely deficient. And I think something qualified in this area as well to consider is that they are taking antibiotics over and over and over again, because we know that B12 is a bacteria.
And damage your digestive system to the point where you can't utilize nutrition. And of course, that's what people are doing. And then obviously the intrinsic factor becomes very important in that for B12. However, vegans are far more deficient in B12 than SAD diet eaters. They just are. That's the studies have shown that. So not that I'm promoting a SAD diet, because a SAD diet is woeful. And one of the things I see vegans do in their arguments is they often compare themselves to SAD diets. And I'm thinking, that's just two bad diets that you're looking at. And the
two bad diets. I agree. Yeah. I think you can be a SAD vegan. I think you can be a SAD vegan. So, I mean, I think the word vegan is, like I said, it's such a broad stroke of, I would have to say for myself, I would much prefer to embrace, I mean, and God knows my heart, I don't like to kill. I don't like to see things be killed. And I don't like to harm spiders in my house unless it's a brown recluse, then I kill it. I try to take them outside if I can. Same way with.
And I think that's a very valid argument. And I don't accept so much that the moral argument in the sense that it's wrong to kill. I don't accept that, but I do accept that given a choice, if you can kill or not kill, I do accept. Well, surely it's better to not kill. That's
right.
That is
absolutely. And I think that is, I think that's a respectable place to come at vegans. My job is to look at why, so I would much prefer to be 100% vegan in the sense of not have to deal with blood, guts, lymph, how an animal was killed, if it was killed correctly, how it was raised, what it was fed, because anymore now everything you buy at the grocery store is toxic. It's toxic. It's not.
From a Christian point of view, God commanded that we kill animals. Commanded. Didn't say you can if you want. Commanded it.
Okay, and are you referring to the Passover?
Oh, not just the Passover. The Passover is one meal. The entire Judaistic religion was based on sacrifices.
Nice. Right. Okay. So.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
The Passover is probably the most famous, but it's
right.
of many, many sacrifices that were given as commands by God to his people. Okay?
Right.
So if we're saying, from a Christian perspective now, if we're saying that we're taking the moral position by not killing animals, you're saying that you're more moral than God. Because God
No. God did not. Okay, so he says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. All things, and when I take that context to mean a lot of things, obviously it can apply to several things. I mean, obviously there's a narrow context in what exactly the time and the people it was speaking to, but there's also that general context where God's desire wasn't that he didn't want bloodshed. That wasn't his desire. His first gift to us was a garden. His first gift to us and until after the flood was vegetation, vegetables, green things.
Well, there's scriptures which give implication there may have been animals being eaten before the flood. But I agree that on the whole, animals weren't eaten before the flood. But again,
you have to agree that his first and primary will for us was only to eat vegetation.
His first and primary will, which is irrelevant. What God originally wanted is irrelevant because the plan has changed. We're operating on a different
plan. But it went back to Jesus, who brought life and life more abundant. So Jesus was the sacrifice.
Are you arguing that you should try and do God's first initial plan? Is that your argument?
I think that should be the basis on everything. Everything should come out. I mean, do you not believe that divorce was a result of a hardened heart and of sin? But don't you believe that a man and a woman and a marriage between a man and woman, faithfulness and fidelity through a lifetime is his plan?
Let's get back to this point. Is your argument that you're trying to do God's original first plan going back to the Garden of Eden? Or do you agree with me that we don't even attempt that, we're under a different plan? Which is it?
I think that we should always look at his original plan in light of his new covenant. Absolutely.
Yeah, should we look at it? I'm talking about, should we attempt to do his original plan? Or should we say that was his original plan, we now have a new plan, and forget, we can look at it, but we're not trying to do it?
Oh, no, I think you absolutely should practice as much of that original plan as possible on this earth. Okay. Because his original plan ties into his...
You want to take your clothes off right now?
Right, I understand that we have... I understand that.
Yes. Original
plan, I understand this.
Right?
Okay.
That's his original
plan. When you talk, I can't repeat that because I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay. I apologize as well. So God's original plan was we didn't wear clothes. Okay, that was his original plan. Now, things have changed, and you're not going to argue that we need to try and accommodate his original plan with the clothes, because... Right,
absolutely. But he still did not...
If you'd started taking clothes off, I'd have fallen off my chair. Right.
But see, he didn't change that. Even with the fall, with that initial sin that ejected them out of the garden, he put clothes on them, but he didn't change their diet. That didn't change until the terrain changed.
My point is that plans change, and we have to follow the new plan, as it were. So the original plan was not to wear clothes and not to sin. Okay, the original plan was that tigers didn't eat other animals. Right. And
Oh, absolutely.
Other animals, and parasites didn't exist. We're not living in that world. We're living in a different world. Okay, and in this different world, we have different rules. Okay, so in this world, God commanded us to eat animals, right? And in the New Testament, which we're under another covenant again, he doesn't change that. In fact, he tells us that the doctrine which tells us to not eat meat is from Satan. And he tells
no. That's actually it. I know. Are you referring to Timothy?
Yeah, 1 Timothy 4. Verse 3.
Okay, so 1 Timothy 4, and it says here it says about Okay, let me get to where to abstain from meats. Meats being properly translated as foods, not flesh foods.
That's not correct. That's not correct. And the proof that it's not correct, without even going into the Greek, is in the actual context. So if you read the next few verses, I'm going to flick onto here to get onto it. So
I've got it. I've pulled it up. I've got it pulled up in the Young's literal translation. But I can also go into the let's see if I can find a.
I personally use the King James. But
yeah,
right.
Let's see.
So it starts off forbidding to marry and commanding to abstain from meats, telling it's obviously already spoken about that being from Satan, which God has received with thanksgiving, of which them that believe and know the truth. For every creature of God is good and nothing to be refused. Every creature of God is good. So it's very clear it's a creature, not a plant, that he's talking about.
Right. But here we have, now, when you're looking at 1 Timothy 4, you're still taking the context of him speaking to agnostics. There were specific sects. There were specific, SECTS, pockets.
Times. This is a prophecy of what's going to happen in the end times.
Right, but we are not. Okay, so then what's the forbidding of? Are you referring to like Catholicism?
I don't think this has happened yet.
Because no one's telling.
This prophecy
no one's
not yet happened, but it will happen. And I've already seen. I read an article just the other day where one area, I think it was in the States as well, but I forget. It's already illegal to eat meat.
In where?
I can't remember. I think it was in somewhere in the States, but it might not be in the States. I forget. But it's illegal.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm following it pretty closely here.
It's the first time I'd seen this myself. But anyway, this is a prophecy about end times, saying what is going to happen in the end times. And in the end times, there's going to come a time when they forbid to marry. That hasn't happened yet, right? And when they make it illegal to eat meat. That's what it's talking about. It's going to happen in the end times.
Okay, so let me follow you here, because I think that's a stretch. I will tell you. I think that you're stretching it, and I'll tell you why. Because everything that goes on in the United States of America, and that's not the end all, but everything. But go to India. Look at what they do. They beat themselves. They cut themselves. That's all. That's all satanic. Hold on one second. Hey, somebody call Beatrice. Tell her I'm on a debate right now, and we'll have to talk in a little bit. That's my oldest daughter. The whole economic system here is there's over 100,000 animals slaughtered per day. Now I'm off by a few here or take, slaughtered per day to fuel the sad diet.
No. That meat fuels lots of different diets, good diets and bad diets. So don't.
No, industry farming. We're talking about industry farming.
Okay.
Yes, factory farming. That's the stats for factory farming.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a $1 billion industry on factory farming. Matter of fact, if you watch some of the Netflix shows, how they open up these, I believe it's Venezuela, they're billions and billions of dollars poured into these chicken farms and all of these things, feeding them horrific food that's not the diets they were intended. I think that, you take a look at that. I don't know how you could say that emphasizing God's first design, his perfect will was vegetables, a garden, and let's not minimize the choice to pick from the tree of life, which we didn't choose. We choose the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which he said you will surely die. And we reside there. This whole debate is the lesser of two evils. Rather, we look at the revelation, which it clearly states that we will know more. We will be in. We will be essentially. I don't like to use the word vegan because it does connotate a political view that quite often is not whole in its doesn't entirely explain my position, but can we not agree that eternity is going to be spent with no bloodshed, no meat eating, no death?
We have to operate in the time that we're in, and we can talk about before there was sin and death, before that happened and what that was like, and we can talk about after, when everything's destroyed and rebuilt and what have you. But we're not living in either of those times. We're living in a time when God has commanded that we eat meat. Okay, that's never been changed. God never said, okay, now stop eating meat. In fact, he says in this verse, and there's some other verses, it's not the only one, but he says in this verse that the abstaining, where you're told not to eat meat, is a teaching from demons. Okay, and elsewhere it says that those with weak faith eat only vegetables. Right, who don't.
Yeah, and I'd like to revisit that. I did some studying on that today. I had some other things I had to because that's something hey, hold on one second. Turn it off now. I told you I was going to be busy. Turn it off. You will wait until I'm finished. Don't turn it on again. Sorry. I told them about this earlier, and I told the timing too. They could have done it any time before or after. I want to revisit that with you. I want to get a little bit more because I have studied that in the past and kind of put it to rest. I do a lot of studying and a lot of things to deal with present health issues for people and things like that. So I a lot of times I'll make a decision based on what I did at the moment, and then I just kind of let it go. But the who's here? Oh, okay. Well, they're gonna have to wait a second. I think that there's a lot when you look at, okay, so you're saying to me that you believe that it's so much of, you believe that it's a command that continues.
No,
the command being done.
I don't believe as a Christian we're under any compulsion to eat meat. If we choose not to eat, I think we're free to choose to or not to. However, however, I believe that, and by the way, that's not talking about vegan, that's vegetarian, because that isn't excluding eggs and all the rest of it. I think vegan is not
right.
totally crazy. But I think there's no question from New Testament that we are free to choose or not to choose. In fact, it tells us in that very scripture that the meat-eating Christian, be careful not to judge the weaker Christian who thinks that they can only eat vegetables. And even in their presence, not to eat meat if it's going to cause a stumbling block for them.
Right. But I think that was based more, okay, so I'm going to give you a couple scenarios. I'll open some scenarios personally that I deal with. The reason that they were eating vegetables in the context of the weaker Christian versus the stronger Christian, the context in which they were eating the vegetables was based on their conscience not having the liberty to believe that God was greater than the curse they perceived from the offering to idols. That was the reason. And what God was saying was that you have no reason to, they're fake.
Because these people weren't just eating meat that was given. There is a scripture I know you're referring to which speaks about meat offered to idols. It's not that. These people were not eating meat at all, only vegetables, not just particular meat that they felt was sacrificed to idols. Full stop. Don't eat meat, only vegetables.
Right. Don't eat meat. But their basis was not what we are dealing with today. Their basis.
It doesn't tell us their basis. It doesn't give us that. But it just tells us.
But it's always in the New Testament. It's always in the context of clean versus unclean. Whether we're not going to fellowship, I really don't believe it's speaking specifically.
No, because you've got to understand that the Jews, and this is the Jews had always eaten meat without a problem.
Right. Oh, specific meats though, but they would
Yeah,
not associate with Gentiles. It was equated, the meat eating, the type of meats.
But it wasn't about clean, unclean, because they'd always eaten clean meat, and now they weren't. Now they were thinking meat was, they shouldn't touch, some of them, with weak faith.
Right. Right. But do you see but it was all contingent on their view. Turn that off. It was all contingent on their view of idol worship.
Right.
And
Let's
that.
okay, let's say it was. It doesn't matter. The point is, right, that the scripture clearly teaches there that as Christians, the ones with the stronger faith understood that all these foods were given to us by God to eat, right, and that we should accept it with thanksgiving, not reject it. But if we had weaker faith and didn't grasp that, then fine, you can do that. And the Christians that had a greater faith and understood that meat was to be eaten shouldn't judge them and shouldn't put an offence in their way. But the point is, the meat is there for Christians to eat, and backed up many times, many scriptures. For example, Jesus, he chose to feed the 5,000 with fish, for example.
Well, actually, he didn't choose to feed them with fish. He had a little boy bring the food of the age, the food that was available. He brought his lunch, and it was multiplied from his lunch.
Yeah, but Jesus,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Jesus could have made any food he wanted. He didn't need to use that food. He could say, "Oh, that's not," and he could have turned some rocks into whatever he wanted. But
and I believe he would have had there not been food to. You see what I'm saying? But I think it's very.
If Jesus had a problem with the fish, he wouldn't have multiplied it for the people. Just like he wouldn't have multiplied the fish for the catch for the disciples. So he made the disciples catch more fish than they would have caught, which then
he was working. I'm not debating that. I don't think there's any debate in my mind at all that I don't think that he's using fish in particular as, oh, that's my example. Everyone should eat fish because I use fish to multiply. Everyone should eat fish because I multiply. That was working within the day and the context.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is Jesus clearly had no problem with eating fish, with eating lamb, etc. He had a goat. He had no problem with any of those concepts.
No, and I'm not saying that he had a problem with it for where he was at in the creation and the judgment and the operation.
Ever anywhere else that says we should have a problem with it. It never says, okay, well, up till now you've been eating fish and meat and animals and stuff, that the clean ones.
Right, but we do, but it does tell us to judge the times and the season. It does tell us to judge the spirit.
When the same time as the disciples were in. We're not in a new time. The New Testament, the New Covenant began with the 12 disciples, and we're in that time still. We're still under that covenant.
I think there's something. That's another whole discussion, which we could talk. My son is here. He's like, stop, don't go there. All right. So here, let's talk about this for just a second. I understand Jesus came and he related to them. He wasn't there to change diets. Okay. He wasn't there to deal with that. He did a lot of healing. We know that. He addressed and he does several times in scriptures with people who seek the physicians over his healing, because we know that sickness and death is not just tied into diet and lifestyle, which, some people will preach that that's the only reason that people, okay, I don't know what that was, but I got a lot of kids here. But specifically the idea that he was there to work within the systems and the situations of the people. I mean, he couldn't even get them to grasp him. He sat there and he cried and he wept. He said, Jerusalem, I long to gather you up as a chicken does as a hen does her chicks. He couldn't even get them to grasp the spiritual concepts of things. Walking.
Anything.
Huh?
No, don't say Jesus couldn't do something, because Jesus is God. He can do anything he wants, right?
Oh, he can, but he said he couldn't. But he said he could. He didn't perform many miracles because of their unbelief.
Yeah.
But right, but he couldn't make them believe. You see what I'm saying? Like not couldn't. You know, I mean, right? He could do anything he wants.
It was going against.
But he works in the confines, right? But he works in the confines of those things.
No, he's not.
You know what I mean? He works in the
confines. No. There's no confinement for God. Only that he sets himself. God.
Right, but
God confines himself. That's it. But he has no confinement.
Right, but he does deal within those confinements, and the confinement was that they didn't believe, so therefore he didn't perform. Now, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I understand. I am not diminishing God's power.
They don't believe because they don't hear. They don't hear because because he doesn't open their ears. If he opened their ears, they'd hear.
Right, but there's something there that made them not open their ears that had to do with them, not him.
No,
you see what I'm saying?
It's totally God. The difference between the man that hears and the man that doesn't is all God. I don't hear or you don't hear because there's something special about us. We hear because God opens our ears, because he's chosen us.
But there's a part of us. Yeah, but that, so you're saying that the predisposition, it makes you.
You don't have any.
You say that he's.
You're blind and deaf and dead. That's the state of all of us, right?
I understand that, but we do make a choice. He says, choose this day whom you will serve. If God be God or Baal, you had to make a choice.
Yeah, but...
See what I mean?
Yeah, but your choice is like a tiger. Let's go back to the tiger. You can say to a tiger, a hungry tiger, you've got a choice. I have this wonderful trifle or this lamb chop. And tiger,
yeah, but there's an innate.
According to what?
But the tiger.
His nature. That's what a tiger chooses on, his nature. What do we choose on? Our nature. God says that we love sin and hate righteousness. Right? So who?
Okay, but all right. So you take a toddler and you put them in a playpen and you give them a rabbit and you give them an apple. They pet the rabbit, they eat the apple. That's their nature. See, because our nature is to want to eat vegetation. Our nature is not to go and hack something to death and eat it.
No.
That's not our nature.
No, it is our nature. That's why mankind is kills. That's in our nature.
That's all nature. See, the new nature has been
Listen,
Jesus died on the cross and sacrificial nature.
Let me explain why your analogy is false. A false narrative. A baby owl, his nature is a predator, right? We have to agree with that.
When left in its nature, yeah, absolutely.
Right. However, it doesn't grab and catch anything when it's a baby. Its parent does all that. It takes the food, it digests it, it does then it feeds it. It's directly partly digested food. Okay, you can't go by the nature, but it's not yet adapted. Now, as humans, what God gave, we do things to the food we cook. We do all kinds of things before we eat it, especially animals. But even with vegetables and stuff. I mean, an apple is an example where we don't have to do anything to it. But more normal food, like if most vegetables cook, we clean, we do all sorts. A baby can't do that. Right, so you can't look at a baby and what a baby's going to do, a baby owl or a baby human, and say that that's what the adult is. No. As we grow,
when you raise, I mean, I can go by 25 years of raising children in a primarily, and again, just recently in the last 2 years or so, I have reevaluated the term vegan because of the political, the no honey and stuff like that. I don't have a problem with honey. But because nothing dies, that's a bigger thing. A great respect. I mean, my perspective is a great respect for sentient beings, for what God creates. I want to care for. Do I know that there has to be death? Yes.
You believe you have a greater respect for sentient life than God does, who told us to kill animals.
No.
But God,
oh gosh, no.
God commanded
right, but that
to kill animals.
Yes, but that is But once Jesus got on the cross and died, that left.
Yeah,
There's no more command.
Right. We no longer have the command because now through Jesus. But the point is, if you say it is wrong, you have a moral thing, a sentient being to not kill it. Then God was wrong when He commanded.
No, I have a renewed spirit that has the same spirit as God has, which is I don't like death. That's a Jesus heart. I don't like death because Jesus doesn't like death.
Well, yeah,
He doesn't want there to be death.
God commanded it in the past and will command it in the future. God,
Whoa.
Time, even in the New Testament time, God killed people on the spot for sin.
Oh, but He's the judge. That's in His. I don't have the authority to kill people on the spot.
Yes, you do. If God,
I don't have that authority.
But God gave the authority many times to people like King David to kill people, to kill animals.
But that's prior, but that's not now. It says, "Thou shalt not murder."
Right. Anytime. If the point is, if God has said it's correct to kill, you can't say it's wrong, ever.
If God says it's correct to kill, then it's correct to kill for God's.
God
for instance,
He commanded us to kill many, many times.
Us personally?
People, by
now?
Human beings, I'm talking about human beings, have been commanded many, many times to kill. I believe the Christian even is, if, for example, let's make an example. Let's say that you're in a situation where somebody with a machine gun comes in and they plan on killing everyone in the. Is it correct to kill that person if it's going to stop them? And I
absolutely.
Say, right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
there's situations that require it. Right. Absolutely. Right. Now, am I a fool? I'm not a fool. If I am in the wild and I am starving, I understand it's correct to kill. Right. You know, I understand that I am not to worship the created, but to worship the creation.
Okay,
that I'm not.
Here's a question: if it's healthier to eat animals than to not, that's equivalent of your argument being in the wild and I need to survive. So if it's healthier and humans are going to survive better, be stronger, more intelligent, whatever, live longer because they eat some animals, and that would be my position, would you not agree that we should eat animals?
No, because I don't agree with that statement. I think that it does not make you healthy.
But that's where we have the debate. Okay, you agree that if it was true that you were healthier, lived longer, stronger, etc., if that's true, then it would be cool, it would be fine to kill and eat animals. Do you agree with that hypothesis?
I would only say that if you're that it needs to be in the context that God shows very clearly how to raise an animal, how to kill an animal, what the animal's diet should be, how it should be slaughtered.
When you're in the wild and you needed to kill to eat, why do you not say as long as this, and this? You just said.
No. Well, right. In the wild, that's a survival situation. You're going to kill what you have available.
It's a survival thing, right? So,
it's just like the showbread with David. It's just like the showbread with David. That wasn't appropriate for all the time, but at the time David needed the showbread, that was appropriate, and God did not hold that against him, right? But any other time, that would be a grave sin.
Again, I ask my question: do you accept that if it was healthier to eat animals than not, if you potentially were a vegan, we're not going to be sterile because of it and wipe out the human race potentially by being a vegan? Would you then say, right, we can't do vegan, we have to eat animals?
But I don't think you have an example of a vegan being sterile. I think that what Price
premise. I'm going to take you there, but I need you to accept the premise, else it's pointless. I'm asking you, would you agree if hypothesis, right? If in the hypothesis that being a vegan made you sick and weak and sterile or whatever damage, if it did that over a period, that you would agree that, okay, in that case, we need to eat animals.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not a fool. I can entertain that argument. Okay. However, let me point out.
Let's entertain that argument. So, in order to know whether that did happen to vegans, we'd have to look at studies, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think studies are a part of it. I don't think studies are the end all, but yeah, I think they're a part of it.
How would we know? How do you ascertain if a diet is healthy or not? How do you
Well, results. Okay.
Let's take vaccines for a minute. I'm assuming you believe vaccines are damaging. Maybe you don't.
Vaccines are 100% witchcraft. Vaccines are 100% witchcraft. Whether they were damaging or not, they're 100% witchcraft.
My question is damaging. Are they damaging?
Absolutely.
Right. And the way we know that they're
Absolutely.
right is because we have studies that show that children that don't get vaccinated are much healthier than children that do get vaccinated. We don't have anywhere near the amount of studies that we should have because they're avoiding them.
Right. I mean, I have 25 years experience with non-vaccinating children, and never have they had an antibiotic ever under that.
Right.
You know, I mean, obviously my son went into the military.
So how long do we need to study a diet before we can say that is a healthy diet?
Well, multi-generational would be ideal, you know, to see generation after generation after generation, surely,
right.
Which would be difficult to find.
Not just ideal. Without a multi-generational study, you can't know, because some diets take 3 or more generations before you see the effects. And one of the effects that they've done studies on using rats with GMO, for example, is that by the 3rd generation, the rats, the baby rats can no longer have babies. They're sterile.
Right, but you do understand. Right, but Price Pottinger's study on the generations that took place with cats was based on refined foods versus native food.
It doesn't matter what the food is. My point is they're given food. Obviously, it's bad food. It's got to be bad food, else it wouldn't have a bad effect. Right? So they're given food, which it takes 3 generations to see the bad effects. Okay.
No, it only took one generation for the curving, for the narrowing of the sinuses, the pinching of the sinuses, and the narrowing of the arm.
I agree. 1 generation, certain little things. 3rd generation, you see it real clear in the fact that you've got sterility. Okay.
Right, and I know that it takes 7 generations to correct, to begin to correct, and that's near almost impossible once you've damaged the DNA.
Well, especially for humans.
But I think.
But anyway, my point is, is to know if a diet is healthy or not requires multi-generations. We can agree on that, right? So what I would say to you is the vegan diet does not have that data. We do not have multi-generations to look at to know if it's healthy or not over the long term. We don't. The data does not exist.
Right. Well, I mean, I think there's some good observations that come from now. When you say vegan, I get what you're saying. You're using the no eggs, no butter, no honey. Am I correct? The political position?
No, it's not a political. It's
that would
definition. If you go to the dictionary and look up vegan, it will tell you what it is. And I'm using that word.
Well, right, but that's a new term. That's a new term. Price Pottinger wouldn't have recognized that.
That is exactly the problem. Vegan is a whole new idea. It's a whole new belief system, which is raging, and it's a belief system that I think is dangerous. Because I think that we're going to have serious problems in the generations to come if we maintain the course we're on now.
But I don't think the problem with that term being used as the measuring stick for, they're going to receive the same situation of all the other sad dieters of sterility. Do you know how many people I have that have passed through my practice that have been sterile that eat meat? Lots of it.
Right, as a side issue, they are poisoning us with toxins designed to sterilize us. That's a whole different issue. And so sad diet people are also being sterilized. But what I'm saying is the vegan diet, if it was a perfect diet grown in perfect soil with no chemicals and no toxins, would still sterilize us over multiple generations.
I don't believe that.
Well,
I
fine.
don't believe that because
You can say that because we don't have the data. I can't prove it. You can't prove it. We don't have.
well, right, because basically this is the truth. The vegan diet, if we and let's not use the vegan term in that, but if it were to have all the marks of perfection that God created, which was good soil,
There's no perfection in this world now. God created perfection.
Right.
We don't have that now. So we're not going to have perfection. I'm just saying decent soil looked after properly. Not perfect, just decent soil, decent seed.
Okay, right. Decent soil with all of the nutrients, the micronutrients, the trace minerals in balance, actually present. Not what did you need, Amelia? Where are you going? I don't need it. Oh, okay. All of those things present.
We did all of that. We would then need to do that for multiple generations, and then we could say, yeah, this is a great diet or not. Right now, we can't say it. So the vegan diet or the non-animal product diet, no animal product at all, is an experiment. I think it's an experiment that's going to end very badly, but you can't disagree with me until we have the data. Up till now, it's an experiment. There's no data to prove it.
But the very things that you're saying that will happen to vegans is already happening to omnivores. It's already happening. They're already sterile. They're already sick, fat, nearly dead.
No. You can't take an omnivore, inject arsenic into him, and then say, look, the omnivore's dying of arsenic. It's obviously the diet. It's nothing to do with the omnivore diet.
It does, because what they're choosing to omni is not just meat versus vegetables, which I'm not saying that you can't have a healthy, I am not saying that you cannot have healthy meat eaters. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that a diet that is predominantly vegetables and fruits is far better than a diet that is predominantly meat. Absolutely. Why? Because one brings
evidence, because we have multi-generations of people who primarily ate meat who are very healthy. But we do not.
But if you go back to those studies, you have to look at all the things that were not there, which was the glyphosate,
No. I'm not taking any account of the poisons that they're adding to all of our food. It doesn't matter what you eat. If it's poisoned, it's going to be bad for you. It doesn't matter what it is.
Well, right.
Vegetables, fruit, water, whatever it is. So I'm taking the poison out of it. Forget the poison. I'm saying a good vegan diet compared to a good omnivore diet. In both cases, it has to be poison free. Otherwise, we're talking about poison.
But I think that it's generations that I think it's very clear. We had thousands. However many years it was from the creation to the flood. That's it's hard to say exactly how many years. Hold on one second. Stop. Put the stuff that you want in my car and I will bring it to your house. Okay, then I will get off. Anyway, the premise here is that we had plenty of time from creation to the flood that people were in fine health. There's no problem. Blood was pure, and that
use that because everything's changed since then. The Earth's magnetic resonance has changed. The temperature has changed. Everything's changed. And this new environment we've got to deal with. Not what they had, not with the greenhouse that they had, with the water above the sky and all the rest of it, where trees would grow like massive trees.
Let me ask you this. The people that Jesus had to...
Say again?
But let me ask you this. Never once does it say in Scripture that he had to heal a vegan. It was all meat eaters. It was all those underneath the law of sin and death.
Vegans didn't exist. Vegans
were that whole system. But the whole system is based on sin and death. The whole system of meat eating is based on sin and death. That's why it was instituted. That's why the sacrifice was there. That's why it continues today. That's why Jesus, when God gave them manna, it was from heaven, and they cried out for the flesh pots of Egypt, and they cried out for quail, and why it was still in their teeth. He struck them with a plague. I mean, it's evident to me that God's the very first problem in the garden was what we eat. And it opened the door to sin and death.
Look, the
Meat eating is sin and death.
is you won't find anywhere in the scripture, anywhere in the post-flood, where God says don't eat meat. Nowhere. In fact, you find loads of...
No, because we have a permissible. It says all things are permissible. It's permitted. There's no doubt it's permitted. I would never debate that. That's true.
No, because he commanded that we eat it. The Passover was commanded forever, right? Not just in a period, forever, right? And in the new covenant, again, eating meat is said as the ones with greater faith. So it's not about being permitted. What's permitted is it's permitted that you eat only vegetables. It's not the ideal, but God permits. If you have weak faith, you only eat vegetables. That's what.
But I think the weak faith was based on having to do with the conscience and the idols, and it was having to do with whether or not things were clean and unclean. And I think it also came down to the point of people were not fellowshipping.
What God has given you for food. That's what it comes down to. The weak faith is God has given us animals for food, and you think in your weak faith you shouldn't do it.
No, I think that I would prefer to stay out of.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying one. I'm not.
Right. I think that that the person who has a conscience of not wanting to eat of death has a heightened,
weak faith.
No, absolutely not. Because it's
the Bible.
It's no.
Faith.
Right, but it's when it says weak faith, it is directly related to whether or not I could tell you this. If I was to eat meat, which I could do, I don't have a problem with that. If I was to eat meat, I could eat it in good conscience. Like, for instance, let me give you an example. If I was sitting with unbelievers and I knew that they were, because there's lots of unbelievers that conscientiously raise meat because they have an innate desire to have clean animals. We've got farms around here.
Because before I was a Christian, which is like 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I was a vegetarian. And I stopped being a vegetarian because I became a Christian. So when I became a Christian, I stopped. And one of the reasons was it hurt my testimony. Because in that day, if you were a vegetarian, there's no vegetarians back then. If you were a vegetarian, you were crazy. So I didn't want to be dismissed as crazy, and then they won't hear my Christian testimony because, oh yeah, he's a vegetarian, he's a Christian, oh my goodness, he's a crazy nut. So I actually stopped being a vegetarian because of Christianity. Now, it wouldn't apply today, that same logic, because vegetarian is no longer considered crazy. But it was 25 years ago. So it's interesting.
Right. Well, I mean, perhaps in your circles 25 years ago when I was raising my first son, it was perfectly acceptable. But I mean, for 25 years, I've raised my kids in a primarily vegetarian, vegan, more vegan than we don't eat dairy at all because we're allergic to it. Would we be allergic if we were in a, on the Swiss Alps and they were eating fresh grass and
milk allergy? Not a problem.
Huh?
I could fix what? Allergy, not a problem. That's the problem with your digestion you shouldn't have.
I've had that. Dairy in America is a problem for most Americans.
Well, because the dairy that they're giving you is crap. You don't want to be, nobody should be drinking that crap.
Right. It's right there under their pile. It should be, hold on one second. It should be in there. Just keep digging. Mm-hmm. Nope, on the chest. There's a bag. Your hand is on it. Nope, go further down. It's way down at the bottom. Yep, there you go. I'll be out in just 1 second. You guys are forbidden to leave.
I have to get some.
Oh, you have to work?
No, I just want to
Oh, okay. I only have a couple more minutes and I want to do more. I do want to do like a part 2 if we can. I definitely want to.
Yeah, so
But I do want to say
that the milk that's bought in the store in the States and in the UK where I am is crap. Shouldn't be touched.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a raw goat dairy, and I can have small amounts of goat
Okay, so your allergy is quite
and goat milk.
You're worse than people. Yeah, your allergy is quite strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you, if I nut cheese is the same way. So if I do nut cheese, I don't feel well. So it's better for me to do if I'm going to make a vegan pizza, it's better for me to do a goat cheese, to have just a small amount if I'm wanting a cheese, than it is for me to do even a process, because a lot of those cheeses are processed. You know, I mean, you can make some. When I make a soaked ricotta from almonds at home, where I let it culture, get good bacteria, I have no problem. But as soon as I add tapioca or things like that, it makes me very ill. I can't have cassava or tapioca of any kind. And I can't eat cane sugar at all. Cane sugar, not even a little bit. But primarily the problem is right across the street from me, and down the road from me is in ridiculous amount of spraying of Roundup. The farmers here in the Midwest of the USA are drenching, absolutely drenching us. So I have not.
Yeah.
I didn't have this problem. Yeah, I didn't have this problem until we had people spraying. And I've just in the last few weeks, we have had a lot of rain here, flooding. So there hasn't been a lot of spraying. And just recently, as there was a dry spell, they started to kick up flooding. And then sure enough, I started to feel sick again. And so that's a big problem. I think that, I've had some theories on that, but
I've found vegans in general have more glyphosate issues than omnivores, because glyphosate is at higher levels in vegetables than anything else, and they eat more vegetables. So it's not. Well,
I mean,
so it's a problem.
I do eat 100% organic and local. So
okay,
for me.
It's the spray.
Yeah, for me, I really believe it is. I mean, if you talk to people who know me, I'm over the top when it comes to quality. I am, but I've never had a medical bill, and my kids have never even been to the doctor for serious illness. One time I had a child with a clogged ear. But as far as we use all natural medicines, essential oils, all the things that God gave us for those things. So
a lot of stuff right. I mean, you obviously are doing a lot.
Yeah.
Right. I just think that you'd be healthier, even more healthy, if you added a small amount of animal product, obviously good quality, the same as you're doing with vegetables, into your diet.
Yes.
But for example, another one we didn't discuss, but omega-3. I'm translating for you because we say omega. So from now on, I'll say omega.
Mm-hmm.
Omega-3. You really want that from animals, not from plants, because the plant omega-3 is not in a form that you can use without converting it, and the conversion is very poor, very, very poor. Especially if you get a compromised digestive system because your glyphosate poisoned, then your omega-3 drops. And
can you hear me? Okay, hold on 1 second. I'm chasing children. What are you doing, Miles? Stay out of my room. I don't know how much more clear I can make that to you. Sorry. Don't go in my bedroom, period. I got a lot of kids.
Yeah.
We go over these rules every day. I have to go because my second oldest son is here and wants to see me. But I want to carry this on. I do appreciate your conversation, and I do want to carry this on before, you know, in a day or two, if that works for you.
Yeah, that's fine. I enjoy intelligent discussion. Obviously, we don't totally agree, but I do appreciate that your position is a well thought out position. You're not just, you know, and you react to information. You don't just whatever. So I appreciate that. Anyone that can be open and discuss.
Oh yeah.
I really do appreciate. And you know,
yeah.
I'm sure as we get to know one another, I'm sure I'll learn some stuff from you about probably not this subject, because I'm pretty solid on this subject, but other subjects.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
I'll learn from you, and hopefully you'll have some stuff that I can teach you as well. So
absolutely, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that we can agree that learning is far more. I think that, you know, I try to glean even when I know I don't agree with everything. I try to glean and try to keep that. I'm trying to make sure that my children also do the same thing. I want them to be able to glean from others instead of shutting people down. I have 8 children.
Right. Wow. So even harder to stay healthy with that many children, because it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, and I definitely, and we'll get into that more, because I'd like to share more about that for sure. I'd like to get some input from you.
Very well to get to 8 children and still look healthy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's very true. It's very true, and and that's something. But self-care, you know, stress care, self-care, that's a biggie. Whether you're eating meat or not eating meat, that's a biggie. But anyway, yeah, I gotta scoot because they're summoning me. They want to see me, but we'll definitely in a day or two, I'll message you. We'll get some times together.
Awesome. All right, Danielle, real pleasure.